All right.
Beaming from Pacific Junction Hotel to Earth.
Yo, welcome to My Summer Lair. I'm your host, Sammy Younan, and I'm ecstatic to have an individual with a unique and fascinating job. So please introduce yourself and what it is that you do for a day job.
My name is Elizabeth Semmelhack. I am the creative director and the senior curator of the Bata Shoe Museum. And I would say every single day is different. It's remarkable given that I'm focused, and I have now been focused on footwear for almost 20 years, that it seems like a narrow focus, but people have worn shoes throughout time and around the world. And so every single day I come across new facts, I come across new ideas. And yeah, I still have questions to ask after 20 years.
And so for people that don't know or not familiar, can you give us a little breakdown too of the Bata Shoe Museum?
Yep. So the Bata Shoe Museum opened its doors here in Toronto 25 years ago almost. In 2020 will be our 25th anniversary. And it
Happy
started,
birthday.
Yeah, thank you. It started as Mrs. Bata's private collection. So Mrs. Bata began collecting shoes, she liked to say, because she married a shoe man. She married Mr. Bata, and she was a young woman, and she wanted to be a part of the world. And so she insisted on traveling with him everywhere he went, because the Bata company had factories all around the world. And so she made a very astute observation, which was people's feet are the same no matter where you go, but what they have put on them historically is very, very different. And so what can be learned about culture by thinking first about the footwear? And so she started collecting, and then the collecting bug bit, and now we have 14,000 pairs of shoes and other attendant objects. And so it is a remarkable collection, and we are open to the public, and we do changing exhibitions and lots of research. And so it is also the only shoe museum in North America. So
way to go.
Yeah.
Are you guys going to do something big for the 25th anniversary?
Yes, we are. The 25th anniversary will be a series of things. The actual birthday isn't until May 6th, but
I was a little early with a happy birthday.
yeah, no, it's totally fine. I did a book on the collection that'll be coming out on the 5th of May. We're opening an exhibition on the 18th century, which might sound like it's a dusty topic, but in fact, there are a lot of things that get established in the 18th century about ideas about gender, ideas about exploitation, ideas about empire that play out at the footwear level, but also find themselves expressed in footwear today. So the exhibition is actually divided between 300 years ago and today.
Yeah, it makes sense because, I mean, some of those themes overlap with sneakers, though.
They do. And actually, there'll be some sneakers in the exhibition.
Okay.
And then the other exhibition that we're doing next year is called Exhibit A, and it's on crime, forensics, and fashion.
Ooh.
And sneakers will be in there, too.
Okay. Is the sneakers related to that, to like running away and like succeeding with the crime, or?
Well, the word sneaker itself comes from the 19th century, and it was about sneaking. And so criminals were as soon as the price point had dropped, because sneakers actually came out as an item of status, because rubber was so expensive. But as the 19th century progressed, sneaker prices drop, and because you can pad around noiselessly, there were. And so I found this really amazing quote. It was this crazy interview with the Chicago Tribune, I believe it was, in the 1880s. And it's like a how-to for sandbaggers. Sandbaggers were criminals that kept pillowcases or bags full of buckshot.
Okay.
And so it was like, so you're a sandbagger. How do you become a sandbagger? And he said, well, you need a bag, you need buckshot, and you need sneakers so that you can sneak up behind people and whack them upside the head.
Yeah.
And so then I found an ad for a shoe company in Boston a few years later, and it said, sneakers, you don't have to be a sneak to wear them. And I was like, that sounds just like Run DMC's I wear my sneakers, but I'm not a sneak, from literally 100 years later.
Right.
And so this thread of implied criminality and sneakers is a very long one, and we'll be exploring that in that exhibition.
Yeah, and so related to that, we'll get into your book in a second, but like related to that then, because sneaker culture, do you view it then as like outsider culture, and then they're slowly kind of sneaking into the mainstream culture now as it kind of gets bigger? Or do you see it as like a group of like outcasts almost? Because there is an individuality that kind of runs through it too.
You know, I grapple with that quite a bit. And so, one, the history of sneakers, and there, I think you could argue there's been different kinds of sneaker cultures throughout the long history of the sneaker. But I think when people say sneaker culture, the best way I think that it can be defined is that it is a group of individuals who are knowledgeable, and that knowledge is more than just a passing, I know that Michael Jordan signed with Nike kind of level detail, but to the point where they almost become a kind of cognoscenti. And so they are able to talk to each other because they know these nuanced details and histories. And so it is about a kind of elite set with a very, very deep knowledge.
Yeah, from a museum perspective, from what you're saying just now, it's like sneakers are our hieroglyphics, right? Because they're kind of like they're symbols.
Well, it was interesting because when I did the sneaker exhibition Out of the Box in 2013, I believe in exhibitions that give a lot of information. So I write a lot of text, and that had a lot of interactives. And for the first time ever in the history of me doing an exhibition, I had people come in and read every label, spend hours in the gallery looking at every object. And I was like, this is the most perfect set of museum goers I've ever interacted with, because they're already historians. And so, there is a love of knowledge.
Yeah, in your book, actually, the Out of the Box for the exhibition, you have a really cool line where you said the urban interest in status sneakers coincided with increasingly larger cultural trend rampant through North American society that suggested individual expression could be achieved through brand identification, right? And this is kind of what you're talking about, right? Where like not just a historian, but people want to know how they kind of feed into or connect to that larger historical trend.
Well, I agree. And so, you know, I talk about this in Out of the Box as well. One of the things that men have been schooled, in fact, going back to 18th century, was that men are by nature rational, and that rationality, that innate rationality, should be proven through rejection of fashion. Fashion was posited as expressly female and related to emotion. And so this kind of drives me insane. And so women have historically been required to show up at workplaces or at parties. Like oftentimes I will say, oh, remember when you went to the prom and all the guys had a similar tuxedo, but every woman's dress or every girl's dress had to be different. Women have to do that in the workplace. And so it comes with economic obligations that I think are quite burdensome. But at the same time, they can express a little bit of their private self by how they get dressed every morning. So men on the opposite side had to be restricted to the suit. And so individuality was maybe limited to tie choice.
Yeah. Maybe some funky socks.
Maybe some, and that's a little more recent ideas of funky socks. And so they have not been included in this idea that what you put on your body can be a part of self-expression. But on the other hand, too, they haven't been obligated. So sneakers, I feel, have cracked the door open to both things. They are allowing men to choose through brand alliance or through model, the ability, or giving them the option of saying something personal about themselves. But it's also, as sneakers, streetwear become increasingly accepted for men to wear, I think you will find that men become obligated to buy more as well.
Yeah. Back in the day, too, like shoes used to be like a women's thing, right? Like Amanda Marcos and people like that.
That's actually how I got into sneakers, because my work as a historian is started out on the history of the high heel. It was in the early 2000s, and people started, even the word shoe itself, like you were just saying, almost had a female connotation. And so when I would go to parties and people would say, what do you do? And I say, oh, I work in a shoe museum. And they'd say, oh, that must be for the ladies.
Yeah.
And then I was like, are you joking? We don't have a culture in which men go barefoot and women get to wear shoes.
Right. Yeah.
And have none of you ever heard of a sneakerhead? And so I actually began to do work on sneakers so that I could help to sort of talk about the fact that, no, it's not a gendered activity. Footwear has can be used socially, and it can be used socially by both genders, right?
But with sneakers, though, isn't there a specific masculinity to it?
Correct.
That kind of underpins it.
That's right. And I think that actually is the secret for why men can consume them.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's no threat to masculinity if you consume a hyper-masculine object.
Right. But then it's interesting because in your book now, we'll finally get to your book now, right? Sneakers and Culture. You talk about collaborations in your new book. You interview and you profile a number of female designers.
I do.
Right.
And I did that on purpose. And so
that's what I'm getting at, because that was a magic trick then, like you're trying to subvert, I guess, the culture a little bit.
Well, I mean, Out of the Box really was focusing on different constructions of masculinity and sneakers from the origin of the sneaker all the way up to today. And so one of the things I did get when the sneaker exhibition began to travel, it opened at the Brooklyn Museum and it went across the U.S., just at the exact time that women were becoming increasingly vocal, or media was picking up on women being sort of saying, hey, how come I can't get anything in my size?
Mm-hmm.
And that there were these systemic ways of keeping women out of sneaker culture. I think not having shoes in your size is a pretty big one.
Mm-hmm.
And so
or the lazy, like they just do it like pink color.
Yeah, the shrink it and pink it. And so women were rejecting that. They wanted to have the same access that anybody else had to sneakers that they wanted. And so all of this conversation was sort of starting to come really being brought to a wider culture around 2015. And so I had purposely not included women, a huge discussion of women in that exhibition. And in fact, I'm writing now a book on women in sneakers, the history of women in sneakers. But I think that there was this watershed moment where companies were like, oh, right, maybe we can include women a little bit more. And so I purposely wanted to highlight the work that has been done by some women who've collaborated on sneakers and include them in Collab. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, because I mean, like, example of what you're talking about, like, even though it's aimed a little bit more at guys, like when Farrah Fawcett in was Charlie's Angels.
Yeah.
She had the Nike Cortez, right? And she was like all skateboarding and stuff, and it's a pretty blonde girl and she's skateboarding, and it's like, oh, this is really... I know it is aimed at guys, but again, it's just kind of already introducing the fact that women can be comfortable doing these things and that kind of thing too.
Well, I would say that that's actually what makes the 70s such a pivotal moment, is that Bill Bowerman brings jogging to the U.S. Jogging is not a gendered activity. Women are very much in the 1970s. Women were urged to do athletics, not to be the best athlete, but to keep slim.
Mm-hmm.
And so women joined gyms. You know, by the 80s, you got step aerobics. The freestyle comes out, which is one of the biggest sneakers of all time. And so women were being allowed to wear sneakers to go jogging, not to go marathon running yet, really. I mean, there's a few women who were able to do that, but women were expected to do some kind of athleticism, but it wasn't to be athletic.
Yeah.
It was to meet certain body ideals set by culture.
Mm-hmm.
And so women have worn sneakers, but they have carried a different message to them. And I think what complicates all of this is when a female athlete like Serena Williams reaches, you cannot get more successful than that.
The Michael Jordan of tennis, basically.
The Michael Jordan of tennis. But how come everyone's not running out to buy and wear her shoes? Like, where are the male customers for the Serena Williams shoes? We still culturally have some discomfort with ideas of feminine desirability and athleticism. We have ideas that feminine desirability and and fitness go hand in hand.
Yeah, I mean,
but not athleticism.
Because it's a different model, I guess, for guys. Like, even going back to, like, this is a weird tangent, but going back to, like, Nazi Germany, right? Where, like,
Correct. I talk about that exact thing.
Right?
Yeah.
And there's always been, like, a standard. And even now into the NBA of how guys should look or whatever, like, it's been a consistent trend, right? A consistent line throughout history of, like, this is what a guy should look like.
Correct. And so male fitness, also fitness and male beauty, right, go together, but so does winning. So does being the best. And so the ways that can be negotiated is by playing sport, winning. You don't win an aerobics class.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So female fitness is not set up on those models. And whereas male fitness often is that it's not just fitness for fitness sake, it's for fitness to be the best.
Right.
And so that feeds into our ideas of masculine competency, and, male ideals.
But it also feeds into sneaker culture because, like, in the East, like, it was hip hop and basketball basically were
Correct.
the two things.
Yeah, they become intimately connected, right?
Right?
Yeah.
And this is what you're talking about, because hip hop too is very much like it's a lot of braggadocious, right?
And so is breaking.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a different form of athleticism. Requires a low top basketball shoe. The Puma, Clyde is a perfect example, and it's competitive.
Mm-hmm.
There are very few places where women are competitive in that, or are encouraged to be competitive. In that way.
And in the West, it was skateboarding. That was the big influence.
That's exactly
again.
Right.
And again, just the ability to do certain tricks and somebody else couldn't do the tricks and things like that.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. And like to pick up on that thread, like you just mentioned, like the Puma Clydes, there's a number of sneakers and brands that are kind of missing from the new book, the collaboration book, right?
Uh-huh.
Was that is that on purpose, or does that take time? Like for somebody like the Stan Smiths have been around since the 70s as well. Like, so does nostalgia take up?
But I do talk about the Stan Smith in the
the Stan Smiths are there.
Yeah.
But I'm asking, like, does it take a while for the nostalgia to kind of kick in, where like people want to start collaborating and like doing cool stuff with like Ewings or Under Armour or some of the newer?
Yeah. So
does it take a while to kind of get going?
It does. And the other thing too, any project like a book or an exhibition is itself an exercise in restriction.
Mm-hmm.
Who will answer your phone calls? Who will help you get an image?
Right.
And so no book can be definitive, right?
Correct. And this is a giant topic too. So
and it is a giant topic, right? And so I did the best I could. I mean, I tried to have a wide range of brands, of people who did collaborate. It's really sort of a smorgasbord, if you will, a buffet that people can look at and consume. But 100%, there's a lot that I was not able to get my hands on.
Mm-hmm. In the book, you interview a major sneakerhead, Babito Garcia, all right?
Mm-hmm.
And in that interview with him, you ask him about collaborations, and you ask, do they open up this idea of dreaming?
Yeah.
So I want to ask you that question. When you look at all the collaborations and when you were seeing them and kind of researching them, did they open up this idea of dreaming?
What I find so interesting about collaborations, and I do talk about it in the book, so this is probably going to be a long-winded answer, but
go for it.
I'm interested, one, in why right now we're interested in collaboration specifically. Why we're interested in two known entities coming together, working together, and being equally acknowledged for that work. One, I think that's really interesting. Fashion is often extremely prescient, and so I've said this in other interviews that I'm wondering if we're slightly moving away from a focus on individualism to thinking more about working collectively, which would be a big shift culturally. And then in talking with the people who worked on collaborations, there's such a driven love for what they're bringing to the table, especially the stories that they can engage with through sneakers. And I'm like, how many other garments do we put on our bodies that we infuse with narrative? It's a remarkable thing. And so then I'm always one of these people who's like stands back and was like, okay, so what does this mean societally? And so, I had this image in my mind like 100 years ago when people had their houses, their Victorian mansions or Edwardian mansions, whatever. And obviously it's an upper class story I'm telling. And you'd walk in and there'd be paintings and carpets and all these things from their travels and their interests sort of in their interiors. And now our interiors are shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And I think that we are having to put a lot of those details, actually wear them on our bodies. And so we are using the juxtaposition of brands, clever ways of pairing objects to get across a sense to the outside world of our own complexities. And I think that collaborations add to that ability to tell complex stories, even of our own selves. And so I don't know if that fully answers your question.
Yeah, no, but I want to pick up on that one thread that you mentioned, which was storytelling. Because like Tinker Hatfield, was when he started doing the Jordan line, that was the first time I ever noticed that there was like a story. And he was weaving a narrative through them. And that's one of the reasons why the Jordan brand is so successful. Because you could...
Oh, I agree. Yeah.
Right? And when you were assembling this collection of collabs for the book, was that one of the hallmarks that you were looking for? Was that kind of storytelling? Or did you start to notice that shift? Because we went from like Chuck Taylor's to like Air Jordans, right? Like in terms of like storytelling.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I wanted to be open to all the different reasons why people would come together and work together on a sneaker. And, I try to also make clear that there are, like, I think of the Stan Smith as not as a collaboration. I think of the Stan Smith as a signature shoe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Stan Smith didn't even really have much to say about the model, right? It's a previous Tense Players model.
Everybody else who's come after it, Pharrell and people like that who have done collaborations with the Stan Smith.
Exactly. And so and that's the other thing too that I say somewhere is that when people come to work on sneakers, particularly heritage models, those are not blank canvases, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're already infused with this incredible history that has to also be considered, adds to the narrative, right, that's being addressed. So if I remember your question, you were asking about storytelling.
Yeah.
And that I think it's just an amazing place to see how so much storytelling can actually take place on a three-dimensional object meant to be put onto your foot.
Mm-hmm.
And there's little hidden Easter eggs, and there's so many things. In my interview with Chris Hill at Reebok, I'm working with Kirby at Pure Moss, is like all of the details and thought that are going into every single little bit of the sneakers, I think is really remarkable.
But it's also a weird balance too, because like you said, like collab is like you're hoping that we eventually move away from like individualism. Mm-hmm. Partly what you're saying is like selfishness and that kind of narcissism.
Well, I mean, just the cult of single genius.
You're
I'm
right.
not saying that this is a complete erasure of
Correct.
that, but I'm wondering if this is a step towards
An evolution towards
thinking more collectively.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but then it's kind of a weird tension then, isn't it? Because like you're using this like mass-produced product like an Air Force One or something like that.
Correct,
and like
yeah.
Nike is $1 billion company. It's not some small indie
Right.
company, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm going to wear these Jordans and then this is going to give me some individuality or signify or tell my story, I guess, partly, right?
Oh, for the actual
Yeah.
consumer.
Yeah, for the
Right.
consumer, for the individual, right? So it's like a
Yeah.
weird tension because you're using a mass product. Not all, and I know some collabs are obviously much more limited in their
Correct.
runs and stuff.
Yeah.
But you are still using a mass product to do individualism. It's kind of a weird
to do
tension, isn't
individual
it?
work. Yeah, it is. Absolutely. 100%.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think, too, that we touched upon it earlier, but that we, through brand alliance, right? It's like, well, I only wear Puma, well, I only wear Nike, or I just wear the Converse All-Star. All of those choices even conjure up in my mind who that person might be, and so I think this is why ideas of authenticity become really important. And then we know as well, something like with the Jordan brand is it's not just that you're wearing Jordans. Oh, you're wearing the 12s.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, 17s.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. And that each one of those also is situated in time. And then maybe you remember when it was first retroed. And I mean, it's a massive brand,
Mm-hmm.
but there are many different points along that trajectory that also bring in ideas of nostalgia, history, individual player, specific games that are all touched upon and used to construct those statements of self.
And just kind of what I was saying with collab, like the rarity too, like the M&M Jordans, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right? I think it was 50 was only made or something.
Something like that,
Yeah, right? So it's like they're super rare.
Correct.
But again, it feeds into both like M&M, so whatever your feelings about M&M are.
Yep.
And then it feeds into Jordan brand, and they're Jordan 4s, right?
Yes,
so
they are. Yeah.
the 3s and 4s are my favorites, right? So like those are like the holy grail then, right? So yeah, I see what you're saying. And then,
then it also allows for those who know, like if you walked into the room wearing them,
yeah,
you
then
know, right?
Yeah.
It's a statement.
That's a lot. That's an expensive statement, though.
Yeah, it's an expensive statement. It's a statement about your own understanding of that rarity, and you're communicating a whole bunch to the people in the know.
Yeah. It's like that classic thing of like 90% of communication is like body language or not spoken or whatever, right? Like when you walk in with a pair of Jordans or something, Converse or whatever, Allen Iverson answer shoes, right?
Yeah.
People already know where you are, who you are, and what you're
right.
about.
Yeah, and so that's an insane amount of work for a pair of shoes to do, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
This is why I have to keep doing work every day.
Because you are constantly unpacking it, right?
Correct.
And that's why I said like hieroglyphics, because there's a number of symbols kind of at work.
Exactly.
And you got a Rosetta Stone and figure out how they all kind of work and translate.
And yet, particularly among other cognoscenti, they're going to be reading all those layers instantly. I mean, it's instantaneous. Right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not like they sit back and like 5 minutes later, I see what you did there, right? It's like, got it.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's a trailer almost.
It is. Yeah.
Because you know,
It's
like,
do you want to get to know me better?
right?
Right.
And you know already kind of like where they're coming from and like if there's a cool person or not cool person, right? So like, when I find somebody wearing Jordans, I'm like, all right, this person got a certain standard or whatever.
Yeah.
I can roll with them. I know where they are, right?
I was once in a line to go through security at the airport where was I? I think I was in Newark. And like for whatever reason, there were like 7 guys who did not know each other who all had on really interesting sneakers. And the conversation that just exploded while we were all waiting in line was amazing.
Yeah.
Like I felt like 5 minutes later, they're all good friends, you know?
Yeah, because it's that shorthand said icebreaker. And so I want to pick up on that thread, though, of the collabs, though, because that's a unique position, right? Like Stan Lee just passed away in November 2018, right? And when he was creating all the Marvel characters, there's a lot of like debate at the time of like how much he actually made with the Fantastic Four, how much he did with Incredible Hulk. And that's sometimes, too, with collabs. Sometimes it's hard to know where the shoe ends and the designer begins and those kind of things, right?
Yeah.
Like, as you said, like you're hoping that this is the next evolution, right?
Well,
Collab
I'm hoping that collective work,
Collective
and
work.
appreciation of everyone who participates in the creation of something. I'd love to see us culturally move to that.
So could the collab process teach us better how to communicate and how to work together? Because it's like everybody's been in school where like you do a group project and there's one person who does no work.
Yeah, and I think probably there are many collabs that never make it to actual production because of inability to communicate or visions can't be realized. Somebody might be a real thinker in 2D, can't understand how that gets translated into a 3-dimensional model of a sneaker. Obviously, we only have what is successful. But I think that process probably, I would be amazed that for every collab that makes it, that there aren't, 10 in the ditch somewhere.
That would be an interesting follow-up book, though, wouldn't it? Like
right.
to see the ones.
Failed collabs.
Yeah. Because, I mean, that's the JC thing, right? He only raps about the businesses that succeed. He never raps about, like, he had a 40/40 club in Vegas that closed. It didn't do well at all. And never bring it up.
Right.
Right? So from the way that he's singing and rapping is like, I'm successful. I'm like, well, that's not completely true, though.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And I think, too, that there are, I'm sure, a great deal of collabs where people feel like there are equals at the table. I'm sure there's ones where it doesn't pan out that way. Yeah.
And is it the collabs now, like the kind of flow of how they're starting to use different materials and different kind of things, and it gets funkier and funkier as you kind of go along? Is it kind of getting harder now? Like, are we almost quote unquote running out of material or something like that? Or like, is it kind of endless or like, because you know what I mean? Because now it's like you're trying to write a song in like 2019. There's a lot of beats and music and notes and stuff have already been like
but it's
used.
because you're just looking at, I mean, not you, but people are, I think you can feel that way if you just look at self-referential things. So the reason why I end the book with Bunyamin Eddin at Le Benjamins in Istanbul is when he and I were talking, he was talking about wanting to use Turkey's really rich history of textile work, and then he was sort of trying to incorporate some of those traditional designs into the sneakers that he was making. And he was talking about some work he'd done with some Tuareg people, and he made this statement, which was, there are so many stories that still can be told. And so if we can just look beyond ourselves, North America, if we can be open to even other forms of storytelling, the world is getting smaller, but I think the way it gets smaller is by listening and including more voices. And so I think collaboration's a really interesting way to bring wide-ranging groups of people into the conversation. And so I agree that maybe, a Fruit Loops collab or whatever, maybe we don't need to now have, Check Mix, Collab, and that maybe that can run itself dry. But I think that if we really are interested in hearing more voices, the world's full of them. And so collaboration could be an interesting way to be more inclusive.
Yeah, I brought up Tinker Hatfield. He obviously kind of tends to dominate the conversation sometimes with these things. He's the Michael Jordan of design, right? So is there any other...
your measure.
Yeah, that's the very simple man, complex times, as I was telling you in the email. But then, like, is there then, like, a couple of designers or people that you would recommend, or people kind of, like, you keep an eye on, or, like, see what they're going to do next?
I mean, yes. Obviously, I'm always interested in what Tinker Hatfield's doing. As I include in the book, like, I think Chris Hill's doing really interesting work at Reebok. I'm interested in what Nick Galloway does, like the collaborators he brings to the table for Adidas. And I'm also interested, too, like, in the shoe surgeon and what he's doing with customization. It's interesting, too, thinking about Mosh, these people who have done these very hyper customization things, whether or not they might collab and make more widely available sneakers. I think that could be interesting to think about. And obviously there are many, many unsung heroes sort of hidden away in companies.
As we wrap up then, I mentioned, like, things are getting funkier and the designs are getting funkier and stuff like this, because you do it chronological.
I do, yeah.
Right, throughout the book. So is this an evolution of taste as well?
I think it's
Is that the best way to put it, or how would you put it?
I think that, I don't know if I would say it was an evolution of taste. I would say it's an evolution of shifting cultural interests. I think that innovation is really... Sneakers have been at the forefront of innovation throughout their entire history. And now that we are thinking about sustainability, it's everything from, like, the Parlay for the Oceans, Adidas working with ocean plastics, but it's...
Steve Nash did a recycled shoe there too.
Exactly. And so thinking about what will our needs for sustainability, how will that drive design? So the Flyknit, the Nike Flyknit's a good example. The Parlay for the Oceans collab's an interesting example. 3D printing and what that might bring to the table. But also, once, shoes do have a very basic job, which is to fit the foot. And they don't actually even have mobility in their mandate. High heels certainly don't meet that mandate. And so I'm actually excited to see what footwear could possibly look like when we can use innovative ideas like 3D printing. And so you're sort of talking about the shifts in architecture and of sneakers, and that people seem to be pushing the limits. But I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I think those limits can be pushed even further as new technologies are invented. And I'm sort of excited.
And that's kind of going back to the athlete and, like, the, like, nobody can run, like, a 5-minute mile, and you know what I mean? And so as the shoes and everything kind of develop, everyone kind of got to be a little bit more aggressive and kind of tries to get out there a little bit more.
And I do think, too, that the majority of sneakers today are separated from athletic purpose, right?
It's fashion now.
For fashion, correct. And so what would the sneaker unleashed look like? When would it cease to be a sneaker, if it gets 3D printed in some crazy shape?
Yeah. Just to wrap up then, so we kind of touched upon the New York City basketball hip-hop community. We touched upon the West Coast, the skateboarding. How are you finding the Toronto sneaker community and, like, Toronto in general? Like, you're not originally from here, right?
I am not, no.
Yeah. In the time you've been here then, have you seen the sneaker community kind of grow?
I have, yeah. The sneaker community has definitely grown. And I think actually I'm really excited to be in this city because, one, world politics is, I think, making Canada really stand out. I think that there are a lot of reasons why Toronto is getting a little more play internationally. And, it's even sort of how I felt when I started here. The museum was 5 years old. It was at its nascency. I was able to be a part of it when it was just starting. Not to say that Toronto's just starting, but I think that Toronto is gearing up to explode on the world stage, grow itself. Its infrastructure is changing. I think it's becoming an increasingly important place for people to want to come to move to live and work here. And so it's great to be situated in a place that's looking to the future, not simply mining what it had been in the past.
All right. We can end it there. Where can people find information on you or the Bata Shoe Museum, especially with the 25th anniversary coming up?
So our web page is great. So it's www.batashoemuseum.ca. And that's where we'll have all of our information. The 25th anniversary, as I mentioned, doesn't really start until May. And so we'll be slowly revealing all of the things that we're going to be doing. I'll be doing 25 unboxing videos.
Wow.
God help me. With a wide range of people, from celebrities to the average person who walks through the door, sort of hoping to delight people with the range of our collection. And yep, it's going to be an exciting year in 2020. So hopefully people will just keep checking us out and actually coming in and walking through the door too.
All right. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Okay, thanks.
Yo, that was fresh. I'm so grateful when somebody is generous with their time and with their ideas. Once again, I'm fascinated by this connection. Elizabeth mentioned it in our discussion of the criminal elements with sneakers, like to sneak around. In 1954, an American psychiatrist published a book called Seduction of the Innocent that linked comic books with juvenile delinquency. There's no such link. His research was entirely bogus, but it did ignite the predictable moral panic and the standard pearl clutching. The other two cultures Elizabeth and I discussed, skateboarding in the West and hip-hop in the East, their origins have criminal and joyful law-breaking, which were factors in their growth. I mean, another culture I dig is magic, which implies the con man, the hustler, but not in the good sense of the word. We go through these cycles of criminality to acceptance to influence the mainstream, which we've seen with Elizabeth's sneaker work. Elizabeth's books are excellent, and I highly recommend both of them. First is Out of the Box, The Rise of Sneaker Culture. This is a social sneaker history and how we got here, how the canvas was established. Her latest book, Sneakers and Culture Collab, is what people who get together do with the canvas. They're both tea-worthy. Brew a strong pot and chill with them. If you want more info on sneakers, I got 2 streaming options for you. You don't even have to wear pants. This is the kind of service that we provide. The first episode of the Nat Geo show, The World According to Jeff Goldblum. It's on Disney Plus now. It's his quirky exploration of the sneaker world. I guess he just found out it's a real world. It's a real thing. It's a bit light in places, but there are some interesting moments. That's kind of like a little fun thing. Over on Netflix, look for Abstract, The Art of Design. Both seasons are incredible. You should just watch both seasons. So good. However, for our discussion, season 1 has an entire episode profiling Tinker Hatfield, and it is stunning. I rewatched it again in preparation for this conversation with Elizabeth. Please do check that out. It'll just make your life better. Lastly, one more thing to check out. Photography Assistance was by Henry Vanderspeck, aka Culture Snap Photography. You have him to thank for the pretty pictures and for applying the Foxy filter and making me look so good. I honestly don't know how he does it. It's some sort of weird magic. Go to culturesnap.ca to check out his outstanding work and be sure to tell your single friends. His stuff is amazing. He's also got some exhibits coming up every now and then. And there's some really cool, he puts his photography on pillows. There's like Kim's Convenience, there's Honest Ed's. There's a few really distinct Toronto icon locations that are fantastic when you see them on a pillow. So do look out for that. You can get the pillow from Henry. You can brew some tea and then watch The Art of Abstract or read Elizabeth's books. That's a good day. If you want to talk about sneakers or comics or magic and criminals, you can hit me up at My Pal Sammy for the Twitter, the Facebook, and the Instagram. My Pal Sammy for all 3. Sneakers, yo!